Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. This is Jackie Orr from NASCASP, and we are really glad that you are able to join us. This is our third webinar in a series of webinars we're doing around the CSBG annual report, and today we're specifically going to be talking about Module 4, which is the individual and family level. Before we get started, a few housekeeping notes just to let you all know that your audio is muted throughout the webinar because we have lots of folks on. If you do have a question, we ask that you enter it in the chat window, which you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, and please address it to all panelists. So this way, all of us will be able to see your questions. And then also, we will try to be able to answer your questions during the Q&A period we're going to have at the end of the webinar. We have been experiencing some internet challenges, so we'll see what we can do, but provided we're able to, we'll be able to answer your questions we'll answer your questions. And then anything that we're not able to answer or respond to, then we'll be putting everything into a frequently asked question document, and then we'll be able to get that to all of you. On the webinar today, we have several presenters. So we have Seth Hassett, who's the Director of Division of Community Assistance at OCS. I don't think Denise is able to join today, but we have Jarl Crocker, who's the Director of Training and Technical Assistance at the Community Action Partnership. We also have Barbara Mooney with the Association for National Certified Roma Trainers, and who's also a consultant with NASCASP. And we have Katie Kajowski, the Research Director with NASCASP, as well as myself. The agenda for today, as I said, is we're going to be talking about Module 4, individual and family level, and we are going to be talking specifically about each of the content. So we're going to be going through Section A, which is the National Performance Indicators and the MPI report form. We're going to be going through Section B, the services list and the services report form, as well as Section C, which is the all characteristics report. And then before we get to questions, we'll be sharing with you some tools and resources that NASCASP has available for all of you to use. And that, we're going to turn it over to, I'm going to actually introduce Seth Hassett with OCS. Seth?
Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm joined online today by Jamia Furbush, who is the OCS Program Analyst, who's responsible for Regions 2 and 10. And today's webinar, we're talking about Module 4, which is the individual and family indicators and the other information related to individual and family service recipients or participants. In terms of adaptation of local data systems and the volume of reporting effort, we think this is likely the most significant module of the annual report, certainly from a local agency perspective. And while, as we go through this, will be that CG eligible entities or community action agencies will all have outcomes to report in every domain of Module 4, but it's generally expected that community action agencies will have individual and family outcome information to report, certainly service information and service recipient information. So this is an important section. We know it's an area that requires a lot of adaptation, and so we hopefully will get some good information out of today's webinar, and we'll look forward to addressing what we can in the Q&A section. So I did want to ask Jamia Furbush if she wanted to say a few remarks as well.
Yes, Seth. Thanks, Jamia Furbush, and thank everyone for their participation today in the webinar. I'm a program analyst within OCS, and I'm responsible for Regions 2 and review the state CSBG plans and annual reports to work closely with state CSBG managers to address questions and arrange technical assistance as needed. The responsible for are New Jersey, New York, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands under Region 2, Region Colorado, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wyoming, and Alaska, Oregon, and Washington. Along with being a program analyst, I am a project officer for the Community Resource Center Technical Assistance Grant and the CSBG Legal Technical Assistance Grant. Always looking for ways to make sure those grants are supporting useful technical assistance related to our performance management framework. To working with CSBG managers, state managers, the progress goes with regards to the new annual report, and I urge those of you who are at local agencies to share your questions with your state CSBG staff as well. We have a new process for everyone, and with OCS, we are working to share information and be responsive to questions that arise.
But then I thought it was important we're trying to make sure that we interest key staff on these webinars especially, and help have an opportunity for people to get to know each other and ask questions as necessary. So I think, Jackie, do we move to the next section?
Great. Thank you, Seth, Jamia. And now I'm going to introduce Jarl Crocker from the Community Action Partnership.
Everyone, as Jackie said, this is Jarl Crocker from the Community Action Partnership. I'm Director of Training and Technical Assistance here. And I just wanted to thank everyone on behalf of Denise Harlow, our CEO, and the rest of the staff here at the Partnership for joining us this afternoon. And also wanted to thank both OCS, NASCASP, and ANSERT for working on these webinars and to doing everything possible to make sure that our network is ready for the implementation of the annual report and Roma Next Generation as a whole. I just want to let everyone know that if you need any other assistance, you can reach out directly to any of us, and at the Partnership, we're always happy to provide you with additional training and technical assistance, or just simply a phone conversation if you need any other help with this, and we'll be able to refer you to anyone else if we can't answer, that will be able to answer your questions if we can't. So thank you again for signing in, and look forward to working with all of you as we move forward with Roma Next Generation. Back to you, Jackie.
Thank you, Jarl. And now I'm going to turn it over to Seth again to kick us off into the presentation.
Jackie, and we'll be brief in this section, but we did think it was important, and for those of you who have participated in the opening webinar, there may be some repetition in content here, but what we're just wanted to do is make sure that we put it in context. The Module 4 is part of a date to the overall annual report for CSBG, and it's part of a much larger performance management framework that we're implementing for CSBG. So if the multi-tiered performance management framework, it begins, as many of us know, with a set of local organizational standards that are communicated by states and are part of a framework for what it takes to be a high-quality community action agency and recipient of CSBG funds. The performance management framework includes accountability measures for both state and federal agencies that administer CSBG, and but ultimately is focused on a results-oriented management and accountability system where we demonstrate the impact of our work. You know that this is framed as a next generation effort, where we have had Roma in place for many years, but are now updating the system. And the annual report is the way that we receive data and get much of the information we need, particularly with relation to Roma, that we use for our analysis, both at every level in terms of our outcomes and results. Next slide. The overall focus of Roma Next Generation is not just on certainly performance management and measurement, and it focuses on a continuous improvement process across a complex system. It's a way of demonstrating our commitment to outcomes across a full community action agency, and reaffirms our focus on local solutions for families and communities, and our focus on building agency capacity for the long term. Next slide. The reporting for the new annual report begins based, of course, on a federal fiscal year, but each state has also adaptations in terms of its own reporting period. We're kind of in a hybrid period right now where we have already implemented Module 1 of the annual report, which is the state administrative report. And the report, all reporting information in Module 1 is based on the federal fiscal year, October 1st through September 30th. So we've completed 1 year of data collection using Module 1. We're currently in the second year of information gathered for that report. And in fiscal year 2018, we will be collecting information for all of the elements of the annual report. The 2, 3, and 4, the submission will be due March 31st, 2019 from states, but as most of you know, that means the reporting and information collection for states that are working for July through July, that begins now, and for each state, that process will be based on the state's fiscal year. Next. This all fits together as part of an integrated process. It begins with this community needs assessment, the strategic plan submitted by the community action agencies, which is for the whole agency, annual community action plan, and states use information from that to submit a state plan reviewed by OCS and accepted. Ultimately, they report on an annual report, and all of that information is used in our report to Congress. Next slide. And with that, I wanted to hand over to Barbara Mooney, who is going to talk about the updated theory of change.
I'm so very excited about this new national theory of change, because it really is another way to bring it all together. On the last slide, Seth talked about how the elements of the new performance management framework work together. And in this graphic, you'll see those elements repeated again. At the top, of course, are the national goals. And what we used to have 6 national goals. Now we have 3. So we've unified the thinking of Goal 6 and Goal 1, and that appears in Goal 1 about individuals and families becoming stable and economically secure. Goals 2 and 3 remain consistent with communities becoming healthy and offering economic opportunity, and Goal 3, that people with low income are engaged in their communities. In the middle of the page, you'll see the services and strategies, and you'll see that there are domains identified there: employment, education, and so on. And those are the domains that run through all of the modules of the annual report that we're going to talk about. And they're the we're framing the activities of the Community Action Network. So the goals at the top and the activities at the bottom or middle. Then our core principles, of course, to the left, and the performance management system identified to the right. And all of this on a foundation of high-performing community action agencies. So the agency capacity, as Seth mentioned in the prior slide, is still very, very important to us. It's not one of the national goals as we had them in the past, but it's an integral part of the theory of change, that the high-performing agencies as well as state associations, state offices, federal partners, and the OCS office, the Community Service Block Grant, all come together in our network to fight poverty. Slide. And what we're talking about today is Module 4 of the annual report. We've, as I said, we've got the first module. The first module has been live, and we already have data in that first module. And modules 2, 3, and 4 will be phased in over the next couple periods. Today, we're going to talk about individual and family level reporting, and I'm going to turn this over to Jarl.
Barbara, and so we're going to kick it off by talking about the big picture with the individual and family level module, and then go through each of its separate components. So slide. It's important to start off by talking about what the annual report lets us do, and I think the core of that is it lets us tell, I think, a very powerful, compelling story about the ultimate impact that our agencies and networks as a whole have on the individuals, families, and communities that they serve. And is provide us with data that's easy to understand and that allows with meaningful summary at the national level, but also data that lets us do some very powerful analysis at the local and state level. And so in a nutshell, what the annual report lets us do is tell a much more exact and comprehensive and compelling picture of who the populations are that we serve, what are the services that we provide, and then finally, what are the outcomes that we're able to achieve. And putting it all together, I think it makes a very powerful case for the work of community action as a network and the work of our individual agencies. And so what it does is provide us that common set of measures to track our performance as a whole from the agency level all the way to the national level with respect to the impact and outcomes those services have. It's also important to stress that the annual report covers all of the agency services, not just those that are CSBG funded. We know that CSBG funding sometimes does go to direct services, but a significant amount of that funding is that glue money that provides support across programs and services, and so we want to capture the wide-ranging impact and the leveraging that we're able to do with that investment. And the data is also going to help agencies and states analyze what's working and identify steps to improve our overall interventions and impacts, really realizing the full implementation of that ROMA framework. Next slide. The way the annual report is configured looks at the outcomes, the services, and the people that agencies work with. And so what it does on the level of that participant characteristics report is that it's going to provide us with very specific concrete data about the types of people, the individuals and families, neighborhoods and communities that we work with, and that will let us do, I think, even better analysis of who we're serving in those populations. The list of services is more comprehensive, and so do a better job of letting us tell exactly what kind of services that those populations are receiving. And then finally, the outcomes will let us tell in much more detail exactly what the impact of the results and outcomes of those services are on the populations that we're working with. For example, if we have a workforce development program, the annual report will let us know that we served 80 people, and it'll give us very concrete information about those participant characteristics of who we're serving. It would then let us know how many people actually received jobs as a result of that. So, for example, we would know that 50 out of those 80 individuals who were served ultimately received jobs as a result of that service. And we would be able to know in great detail which populations that were served end up with those jobs. We would be able to look for any relationships between the demographic details and the outcomes that those populations were achieving. So it's really going to be a very powerful tool to detail the outcomes our programs are achieving, and also a useful tool for doing continuous program improvement because of the level of data it's going to provide us. So what you see in front of you are the sections of Module 4. Section A covers the individuals and family national performance indicators, or those outcomes. Section B provides you with the individual and family services, so those comprehensive lists of services our agencies provide. And then Section C is the all characteristics report, or those demographic and other details of the populations that our agencies serve. Next slide. So what you see is a crosswalk here between Module 4 in the new annual report, sections A, B, and C, crosswalked with the old IS survey showing you what's changed and where those have been, sections have been included in that new annual report. And I think one of the most valuable things for your agencies about these slides as we go through them is they'll detail what's the same with the old IS report, what's been changed, and where sections have been combined, which will hopefully let you do a focused and detailed job of figuring out where you're already collecting data that you just simply need to continue collecting and then just simply upload into the annual report, and where you might need to do some thinking about data collection to make sure you're capturing all three of those aspects, the population characteristics, the services, and those outcomes. Slide. So what you see here are the national performance indicators organized by domains. There are 7 domains: employment, education and cognitive development, income and asset building, housing, health and social behavioral development, civic engagement and community involvement, and outcomes across multiple domains. And the indicators in the MPIs provide a means to measure achievement or movement towards long-term goals, and we'll talk in more detail about what you're reporting there, but it's a very powerful system for describing exactly what outcomes were achieved by the services that are being provided. They also document the number of people who received services and the number of people who achieved outcomes. And as I mentioned before, it provides very powerful data for analysis because it'll tell us what change was expected. So what were the targets we were hoping for? What change actually happened? And then how does that actual change compare with the expected change? So are our projections accurate, and what can we tell about the population characteristics of the people who are provided services and the outcomes that they were achieved? So I think it's a very powerful system for looking at what's working in our programs and continuously improving our programs and services, and then overall telling, I think, the very powerful story that the impacts our agencies have on the communities that they serve. Next slide. The agencies, again, just to emphasize, only report on those MPIs that are relevant to achieving the goals and outcomes set by your agency based on local needs and conditions. The expectation isn't that you'll be reporting for every single MPI, every single service, only the ones that you provide, only the services you provide, only the outcomes that you achieve. And the annual report does not mandate the use of any of the proposed outcome indicators, but what it does do is provide a set of standardized menu of indicators based on those that have been proven effective at the individual and family level for many years. So I think it's important to stress both of those facts. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to talk about those MPIs.
Great. Thank you, Jarl. This is Katie Gajowski. We're going to take a deeper look at the individual and family national performance indicators. Next slide. I think it's important to mention, to follow up on what Jarl said, that this is a menu of options. So notice that we have a lot of new indicators, we have a lot of similar to the old indicators, but these are just what's available for reporting. Indicators are domain 1. So as you saw in the theory of change, and as Jarl mentioned, all indicators are organized by these domains. Employment is the first domain. Employment indicators collect data on outcomes achieved by low-income participants in community action employment programs. Slide, there are 5 columns. Across all indicators, there are 5 columns. This is the number of participants served. The column, you'll enter the target. The target is the number that you're expecting to achieve the outcome. In the third column, you'll report the actual result at the end of the program period. The fourth and fifth column will auto-populate. The column is the percentage achieving the outcome, and the fifth column is the performance target accuracy. We'll talk more about those later. The employment indicators, you can see that these expand on NPI 1.1A through D. All slides that we're using come from our annotated version of the annual report, which we show you at the end of this presentation how to locate on our website. So you can see that some of these indicators are similar, the number of unemployed adults who obtain employment, but we've expanded on that. Now you can actually report on, if you can track, the number of unemployed adults who obtained and maintained employment for at least 180 days. We have pulled out the number of unemployed youth who obtained employment to gain skills or income. So we've added some nuances in these indicators. Next slide, please. And in cognitive development indicators, this is domain 2. These indicators collect data on outcomes achieved by low-income children, youth, parents, caregivers, and other adult participants. These are very similar to the Head Start performance measures. So if you have Head Start programs, this is where you'll report those outcomes. As you can see that these expand on NPI 6.3. And we've also added some new ones, nuanced some. So take a look at these, especially if you do operate those Head Start programs. Next. Asset building indicators. This is domain 3. This collects data on unduplicated participants to achieve results from programs that increase the ability to meet basic needs or increase assets, or ability to manage or utilize resources, or perhaps improve financial well-being. You see that there are new indicators here as the number of individuals who achieved and maintained the capacity to meet basic needs for 90 days. We heard a lot during the comment period on this report that we don't have great indicators to show that we're helping folks meet their basic needs. So we added indicators about that. You can see that some of these indicators are also very similar to NPI's 1.3. Some of the work that you're doing and reporting in NPI 1.3, you may find a place for it here. One is that I'd like to mention that we talk a lot about is the low-hanging fruit. What are you currently collecting data on and reporting in this current CSBG IS? Start there, and then look through these indicators as where you might want to go. What are you doing that you currently don't have a place to report? Do you find a place that in these indicators? Maybe that's something that it might take a year, or 2 or 3 years to develop the systems to be able to report those outcomes. I guess there's a menu of options for the work to report the work that you're doing in your organization. Next. Indicators. Domain 4, this collects the information on housing outcomes such as access to emergency housing, obtain and maintain stable housing, reducing eviction, improving health and safety of your home. This is where you could report weatherization as one option. You can see some of these indicators are similar to NPI 6.2, 1.2, and 6.4, and we have a couple of new indicators. The indicator that I'm mentioning where you could report housing weatherization if you choose is the last one, the number of households with improved energy efficiency and or energy burden reduction in their homes. Health behavioral development indicators. This is the 5th domain. This collects data on the number of number of individuals who achieve outcomes such as improving physical, mental, behavioral health, improving household interaction skills, creating the ability to live independently, decreasing the rates for recidivism. Most of these indicators are new, but there is one that is similar to NPI 6.3. and community involvement indicators. This is an entirely new section. Collects information on people who increase leadership skills, social networks, knowledge of program participants engaging in improving the conditions of their community. These might be where you would report a circles project or some type of similar getting folks involved in their communities and building their social networks. Next. Indicators, we have the option to report an other indicator. We understand that while we have a menu of options and we do have a lot of indicators, there might be work that you're doing to obtain a certain outcome that's not listed here, and we want to know what that is. You always have the option of inserting an other and provide the similar type of information in columns 1 through 5 as you did in the other indicators. Next slide. Across multiple domains. This is the 7th domain. This collects data on the unduplicated number of individuals who one or more of the outcomes report throughout all the other domains across this report. So if you have folks that have received outcomes under housing and outcomes under employment, you report them under housing and employment. And if your systems are capable of doing it, you would also report them unduplicated once here. We'll talk a little bit more about this later in the presentation as well. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over to someone else to talk about the services list. Jarl, I believe.
Hey, Katie, thanks so much. And so now we'll go into a little bit more detail about the services list. What you're about to see is the new list of services in the annual reports, and services are obviously what we deliver to individuals and families. Now, there has been some feedback about the IS, that the outputs and outcomes were mixed together. So what I think you see in the annual report is a very clear story that moves from the outcomes that we achieve, the services we provided to achieve those outcomes, and the populations that we serve. So now we're in that middle section talking about the services and outcomes. So I want to point out a few things about those different sets of services. Slide. So we see here is the list of services under employment services. So a couple of things to point out in this slide. So first you see those section headers that capture the different types of services that are provided. So at the very top you see that skills training and opportunities for experience. Just one minor thing to point out, you'll be reporting on the list of services under those section headers. So you don't need to put anything in that right next to the skills training and opportunities for experience. You would put the services that you're providing underneath that. I know it's a minor point, but just something we've had a few questions on. And what you also see in the red is that crosswalk that we talked about earlier, showing you what services have remained the same, where there have been some expanded additions added, and where there are some new services that you can now report on. And we really think that's one of the benefits of this section, is it's much more comprehensive when it comes to being able to account for what services you're providing, the individuals, families, and communities that you're serving. And so you can see you're provided with skills training and opportunities for experience, career counseling, job search, post-employment support, and employment supplies. And as you go through these slides back at your agencies, I suggest that you do that crosswalk to see where are you collecting data that you're really not going to have to change, because it's exactly the same data that you provided for the IS. Where have some things been expanded, and where are there some new categories of services? You need to think about whether you're collecting the data for that, or you might need to do something to update your intake form, or the way you're collecting data for your programs and services. Next slide. Here you see the list of services for education and cognitive development, and just two overall categories: child and young adult education programs and school supplies. So at the bottom you can see school supplies is one of those new categories. So that might have been something that you weren't previously collecting information on. So you would go back and see if you have been collecting that information, and if not, and you do have a program that's providing school supplies, you would then determine how best to collect that information to be able to report on that unduplicated unduplicated count of the number of individuals served. Next slide. It shows you the category of services for income and asset building services. So you see categories for training and counseling services and those benefit and advocacy services. Again, you'll see a number of new services here pointed out in the slides. So same advice, I would go back if you are providing these services, make sure you're collecting that data that would let you provide that information on the unduplicated number of individuals served. And you can also see that crosswalk with the older NPIs from the IS. Next slide. This details the services under housing services. So you can see the categories for housing payment assistance, and prevention services, utility payment assistance, and housing payment and rapid rehousing. So this is one of the categories that there's a significant or a larger number of new service categories that are provided. And again, that crosswalk, some things that have been combined from the old IS. So if your agency does provide housing services, this is one I think to take a deeper dive in to make sure that you're collecting that data that will allow you to report under these categories and make sure you're telling that full story of the housing services you're providing the folks that you work with. Next slide. These are the services for health and social behavioral development. So they cover health services, screenings, and assessments, and reproductive health services. So again, same advice. Do that crosswalk if you do provide these types of services to make sure you're collecting the data to be able to report on this. Next slide. This shows you the services supporting multiple domains, and there are a larger number of options here. There's case management, eligibility determinations, referrals, transportation services, child care, elder care, identification documents, re-entry services, and immigration support services. So it allows you, I think, to tell a very comprehensive story about those services that do cut across multiple domains. And finally, last slide here. You have the civic engagement and community involvement services, and that just encompasses voter education and access, leadership training, tripartite board membership, citizenship classes, getting ahead classes, and volunteer trainings to tell the full story of the services around civic engagement and community involvement. And over to NASCAS to talk about some examples.
Well, Barbara here. We're going to look at just a couple of examples just as a way to get us grounded between the information that Katie provided about the NPIs and Jarl provided about the services. The Action Agency is operating a family development program. And so they are working with 50 people. People obtained and maintained employment for 6 months. And of those 50 people, 5 also obtained a certificate or a diploma of some kind. And all 50 of these people received multiple services to obtain these outcomes. So we report these outcomes and services in Module 4. So for those 2 different places, because there are 2 different outcomes, we would report the employment outcomes in the employment domain, number of unemployed who obtained employment, and the number who maintained for at least 90 days. If also we're able to keep track of them for 180 days, we would also count them in that NPI. Count them in the education NPI that has to do with obtaining a recognized credential or certificate or degree. So in both of those domains, we would have indicators of success. We would also count the services that were provided in the employment and education services categories, and you'll see some ideas listed there of some of the services. And there may also be other kinds of services having to do with transportation or housing or other services that are in other domains that you also report if they contributed to the outcomes in employment and education. Another example, the Community Action operates an in-home health program, and the purpose of this program is that seniors are maintained in an independent living situation. Now, where do we report that? Okay, it's under the Health and Social Behavioral Development NPIs, and it talks about the number of seniors who maintain independent living. And also find the services identified under Health and Social Behavior Development Services in the services list. And you'll see that in both of these, we're talking about the domains, and we're not separating them into the Goal 1 and Goal 6 framework that we used to work with. So we're looking at advanced multiple domains, and that's really what the next example is. Example of someone who participates in different programs of the agency and obtains multiple outcomes. It's not just about employment or looking towards employment or working towards employment, but about having outcomes in many different domains during the course of the year. So the Community Action Agency now has a place to report this kind of success in Module 4. So in reporting them in the individual domain areas where they were succeeded, where you found success, there's also this multiple domain area where it says the number of individuals that achieved goals in more than one or more of the domain areas. And number there would be the unduplicated count. So if you have some people that got housing services, some that got health services, some that got education, some that got employment services, you would find the number that was unduplicated across those various services, and that would be the number that you'd put in that first box, and the number that were targeted and the actual results, and then the percents would calculate it automatically. So look at the characteristics of the individual served.
Yes, this is Steve. Thank you, Barbara. Yeah, excuse me. So this time we're going to be talking about the All Characteristics Report, which is Section C. So the ethics and characteristics, the goal is to be able to tell how many individual people are served. So to be able to provide a full picture of all people served in an agency, whether or not is directly funded by CSBG. And unduplicated counts are expected, as is currently with the IS report. As we move into the showing you the all characteristics report, we'll be able to show you the new and expanded categories that we have. All right, thank you. Many of you will find this section, this all characteristics report, similar to Section G in the IS. Take a look at the individual level characteristics. This report contains both individual and household, but we'll start with the individual. Those, what you see that's highlighted, that makes it easier for you to see any of the additions or changes that we have made to the report. So we'll walk through each of the different categories. So under gender, you'll see that there's an additional other and unknown and not reported. And you'll notice that unknown and not reported has been added into each category. And that's because we recognize and understand that all data points will be able to be collected on all participants. So the unknown and the not reported has been added to help address the data points that couldn't be collected. When we look at age, you'll see that age, there's new age ranges to align more with the indicators, so those are highlighted. Looking number 6, the ethnicity and race. These really correspond with the U.S. Census categories, and again, you'll see unknown and not reported in both of those. And then can we go ahead? And the education levels. In under education, you'll see that there's a new addition for youth. You'll see that ages 14 to 24 has been added, as well as graduate of other post-secondary school. In Category 4, there's disconnected youth, and that's a new category for youth who are ages 14 to 24 who aren't working or are not in school. And it is the health category. So there's new information here about health insurance sources. So you can see that there's a bunch of different selections that are available, and you can choose more than one. And see, going to the upper right-hand side of the screen, you'll see military status. So military status is a new category for the characteristics report. As when you see work status, number 8, individuals, this is applicable to individuals who are 18 plus, and this asks for full-time work, part-time, seasonal, unemployed, and unemployed short-term, 6 months or less, long-term, or unemployed, not in the labor force, and retired. We're looking at for the all characteristics report is households. This is part D. In households, we have household type, number 9, which there's been another couple of new types of households that have been added. You can see non-related adults with children and multi-generational households. And then number 10, household size. The single person household was added. Number 15, sources of household income. There are an expanded number of options here. So you have income from employment only to income from employment as well as other sources. No income or non-cash benefits only are some of the options in that category. And then when we look at 14 other income sources, again, this has been more, and there's expanded options all the way from, veterans, disability compensation to private disability insurance, as well as workman's compensation. So let's slide. And then 11, you'll see housing. So there's an addition, other permanent housing. 12, for the level of household income, there has been an addition for the 250% of poverty and over. And then the top of the column of the right is a continuation of the sources of household income that we saw on the previous slide. And then the category number 15, non-cash benefits. These are also, this is a new category, and you can see options here, SNAP, public housing, child care voucher, HUD, and then, of course, as I had mentioned earlier, that in each of the categories, there's the unknown or not reported. The bottom of, great, this is good, thank you, Kyle. Oh, you can go ahead, Kyle. This is also at the bottom of the form, there's 2 boxes. There's line E and line F. And this is where you're able to include the number of individuals that you weren't able to include in the total above. And this is if you have a data collection system, you're not being able to have an unduplicated count across several systems. So line E, you would be able to list the unduplicated number of individuals served in each program. So these individuals may have included in item A or C above, but due to any systems inoperability issues, an unduplicated count could not be obtained for particular programs. So you're able to do that in line E for number of individuals, and then Kyle move if we could have the next slide, and then you're able to do it for the number of households as well. So the households may have been included in item B or D, but because of other issues with your systems, you can do an unduplicated count but could not be obtained for particular programs. So let me give you an example of that, so to help you understand what we mean by there. So an example is an individual served by an employment program, housing assistance, and LIHEAP. And a duplicated count is obtained from data entered for the employment and housing programs, but not from the LIHEAP data. What you would do is enter data from the employment and housing programs can be entered into items A and item C, and then the LIHEAP data is entered into that item E that we were just speaking about. And then I move ahead to the next slide. I think right now we turn it over to Barbara. Barbara is going to be talking about setting targets.
I quickly remind people, if you have any questions, to place them into the chat and address them to all the panelists. Thank you. Thanks, Barbara.
Thanks, Kate. So we've mentioned a few things about setting targets throughout the course of the webinar, but we thought it would be useful to just come back and talk a little bit about setting targets. This is not a tutorial on setting targets. This is just a high-level overview of the targeting aspect of the new Roma next generation process. Even use targets. Well, the target demonstrates the agency's expectations, our own capacity, about their capacity to deliver results, about being realistic about what we expect to achieve, about using benchmarks and other kinds of press tools like sub-goals and indicators. So it's a way to help identify the agency's capacity to do its work. Usual, as it is also connected. Next slide, please. Legislation. In GPRA legislation, the Government Performance and Results Act, both original and the Modernization Act of 2010, there's reference to performance planning and performance goals. And this is relates to how you apply planning in a specific way to reference two kinds of targets: the number of people that you expect to serve and the number of people of those who were served who were expected to achieve the outcome. So these are identified in the planning phase, and then they're assessed in the evaluation phase. So phases of the Roma cycle when we're talking about assessment and evaluation. So just a brief review that you're identifying local needs in the community assessment process. You're planning using both an agency-wide strategic plan, a community action plan, and other kind of planning documents and processes to say what the agency wants to achieve. And these achievements are all related in some way, we believe, according to our national theory of change, that all of these achievements are related in some way to the national goals. And these three national goals that will shape our discussions about all the results that we're going to achieve at the local agency level. Next. Into that, we're thinking about the services and the strategies that are a part of the plan process to reach these national goals. As we just saw, the annual report has services identified, which is new in the reporting process, and also strategies at the community level that you'll hear about when we talk about Module 3. Now, these are the things that we'll know: how much change we expect to see, what kind of an effect that will have on the community, and then resources do we have that are going to provide these services and strategies we assume will produce the outcomes. So this is where we want to identify the indicators of the outcomes that we expect to achieve. This is the way we're going to quantify those expectations of accomplishments or outcomes. That's what the indicators will show us. Next slide. Who will be served? This is the first target number. And of those served, how many will achieve the outcome? How will experience the change that we expect? And that is part of the second target, and the relationship between those two numbers, the relationship between the number served and the number that achieved the outcome is the foundation. It produces a success percent, and that is the foundation for much of our data analysis that we're going to be working with going forward. Here's an example of some outcomes and some indicators. The program participants pass the GED test, that's the outcome, and the indicator would be that 30 out of 50 participants, or 60%, achieve a score of 85 or above, which is passing on the GED exam within the program year. The other is that parents demonstrate increased knowledge of good parenting skills. So the indicator would be 25 out of 50 parents, or 50%, achieve passing score, and a post-test knowledge related to parenting following the training program. So these are the indicators at the local level. They're related to the national performance indicators. Slide. National performance indicators, remember that the national performance indicators, the NPI, are a standardized set of indicators that come from understanding what the local agencies actually do. Statements that have been identified as most commonly used to measure the outcomes produced by network. These numbers have been a part of the NPIs in the past, but only a couple of the NPIs. So this isn't a new concept, but now the calculations are connected to all the NPIs. And so the agencies are reporting the number that was actually served, the number who expected to be served, expected to achieve an outcome, and the actual number who achieved the outcome. And those three pieces of data will provide automatically calculated percent. One is the performance of the customer, that's the number who achieved over the number divided by the number actually served. And give the agency to target, that's the relationship between the number expected to achieve and the number that actually achieved. And I said there's certainly more information about these concepts. The NASCAS targeting manual that's available at the website, and which will be the subject, I'm sure, of additional webinars later on. Next. What to be clear about is what specifically will happen. What does achieve the outcome mean? In some cases, there are multiple outcomes. Remember, that was we just talked about that, how you report that in the NPIs. But it might also be part of a stepping stone process, so that there are interim indicators that are going to show you progress along the way. So, for example, here's a little logic model. That the need statement at the extreme left is that individuals in the community have no high school diploma or GED. And the service is that the students are going to enroll in a GED test preparation course. The outcome is that students obtain a GED. But along the way, you are going to want to measure the number of students who are improving their basic skills. And it may be that at the end of your program year, you have a number of people who have improved their basic skills, but they have not yet achieved the outcome of the GED. They may need to continue into the next year to make that achieve that outcome. So you might have a separate indicator that says the number that will improve their basic skills. You have evidence identified there. I might just throw that in that you have output and outcome measures. Your attendance log documentation is proof of the number of services that were received, the output, the test scores, or the actual document itself, or the actual diploma would be the outcome measurement tool. That would be the evidence that the outcome actually occurred. So those are just a few things that get us settled on identifying those targets. And that's just a tiny piece of this whole concept of using data for analysis. So I'm just going to talk a few minutes about using data for analysis. So targets. Well, the targets put the results of indicators into perspective. You'd be considering what your resources are and what the agency capacity is. And so if you haven't met your targets, why did you not meet your targets? Was it that you didn't have enough resources allocated, or that there wasn't the proper recruitment done, or that something changed in the environment? Something could have changed that was unexpected. And so the targets, understanding what the targets are and then how well you met them, it's useful to you at the agency level, but it could also tie to national, state, to national or state level targets as well. How does the agency indicators respond or relate to the national and state indicators? So those are all things that can be considered in the process. It is based on the data that you collect, because you can't really manage your performance if you don't define and measure it. And so often we think the data is only in the reports. That's the only place that you get data. But it is really found throughout the Roma cycle. And it's really important for us to understand all of the places and all of the different kind of data that might get brought together to really help us to understand why what we're doing either works or doesn't work, and what we need to improve. It's important that data collection is done in a way that assures that the data is accurate, that it is complete, and the data is timely, that you're submitting the information to whoever is doing the actual data entry or data collection is providing information in a timely way. And then that data gets organized into useful reports, into reports management can actually use to understand the implications of the data. It helps the agency effectively connect the people and the communities with the services. So there will be data pieces that are not part of the annual report that actually make those connections to say not only what happened and who achieved the outcomes, but what was the nature of the folks that achieved those outcomes? What were the demographic properties? Was one group more successful than another? And is there a way that we can find that out? Because that'll help you identify actions to improve or strengthen your outcomes. Section with a graphic that's available on the NASCAS website. It's a way to look at the data elements on each of the places of the Roma cycle. The data that's in the assessment documents, how do you use it, how do you organize it, and use it to make your planning decisions. And what are data in the planning documents where you set your targets and where you say this is what we're going to measure and how we're going to measure it. How you collect that data as you implement your services. And then as you report and analyze or evaluate that data, coming back to the assessment. And always remembering that this cycle is not to be considered to be only clockwise. that these pieces of the cycle can be done counterclockwise. You might evaluate and then look at the achievement of results and then figure out how that impacts implementation. You might go across the cycle. You might go from the results over to planning to say, oh, we found something out and we have to change how we're planning for the future. So the data that's found at all levels of the cycle is part of what you'll be using to analyze what you've done and to think about what works and what can be done better. So I'm back to NASCAS for some resources and tools.
Thank you, Barbara. This is Jackie. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the resources and tools that we have on the NASCAS website to help you as you do the implementation of the annual report. So what you're seeing now is the CSBG annual report numbering. So we have a new numbering system, the unique number for every data point, so for every NPI, as well as services and strategies. So it is an Excel document on our website. In a minute, I'll show you where it lives on our website, so you'll be able to locate it. And we will be updating our other tools that we have on our website with this numbering. Our slide. This is the annotated CSBG annual report, and this is really what you've been seeing throughout this webinar. When Katie was talking about the NPIs and when Jarl was showing you the services and where it connects with the current NPIs in the IS report, that document is on our website as well, which will be very useful to you. Next slide. So we have several crosswalks. So here are three. One in the back that you see with the high-level crosswalk, that is actually something that Jarl spoke about, and we have each of these crosswalks for all the modules. So it really is a high level that shows you the, the sections that are in Module 1, 2, 3, and 4, and how they connect or correspond with the CSBG IS survey. The document on the left in the colors, that's crosswalk with the CSBG annual report, the IS survey, and then the organizational standards references. So I think that's a great tool, especially to share with board members. The document that you sort of is in the front, oops, go back one slide. The doc there that you see in the front, that is the crosswalk with the current NPIs and how they align with the NPIs in the annual report. And Katie mentioned earlier, this is a good tool to use when you're looking at what you've been reporting on in the past with the IS and how you can report on that with the new annual report. So you can say, okay, I'm reporting on 1.1A, unemployed and obtained a job, and where will I find that in the new CSBG annual report? So there are a number of agencies who've talked to NASCAS staff who walked through this process and have found it very useful. So I think you'll find that crosswalk to be a valuable tool. And all of them live on our website. So you see the arrow is the CSBG annual report. Those documents are all under that tab. You also see there Module 1 and then Module 2 through 4. So as we get more specific documents as we get more documents for the specific modules, they will be located under those specific modules. Next slide. So a page under that CSBG annual report, so you can see that there's lots of documents there. So we have the Excel spreadsheets for modules 2, 3, and 4. We have, of course, the final CSBG annual report in a PDF format. You can even notice that there's a couple presentations on there, and then the bottom of the screen you'll see all those crosswalks that we've spoken about. If you do have any problems finding something, if you get there and say, well, there's that particular document that you were speaking about and I can't find it, just reach out to us and we'll help you locate any document that you're looking for. And then we do also have a tab for Roma Next Generation. So there's information here about Roma Next Gen, the theory of change, and that graphic cycle that Barbara just went through that has the call-outs around each of the components of the Roma cycle. That's also located under that Roma Next Generation tab. And we have some resources that are coming in July. We're going to be doing an annual report crosswalk with LIHEAP, Head Start, WIOA, and weatherization. So if you're reporting under these programs, you can see how those connect up with the NPIs in the annual report. And then we are going to be, the webinar series that we're doing now, this is a webinar for Module 4, as you know, and then we have Module 3, one more for Module 4, and then webinars for Module 3 that will be upcoming, and we'll show you a slide on that in a few minutes of when those dates are. And then I see we've gotten a couple questions about definitions. So we are in the process of doing instruction manuals for Modules 2, 3, and 4, which you will be seeing relatively soon. So though there will be definitions in those instructions manuals and in the lexicon so that you'll be able to have that information. And then the next slide. And I'll point this out to you. This is the CSBG Training and Technical Assistance Resource Center. You will probably see this. This lives on the partnership website, but there's also a link to it at NASCASP, and this is a joint effort between NASCASP and partnership. So there's lots of information on this as well, and as we upload tools to the NASCASP website, we upload them to this website as well so that you're able to find the tools in multiple places. Next slide. Any questions? We'll be going to questions in a minute, but in general, if you have questions, you can reach out to Katie or myself, and you'll also see Lauren Cook's email address on here as well. Lauren is the CSBG Deputy Director at NASCASP. And then the next slide. This is what I was just referencing, the annual report webinars. So I have one more on Module 4, which is July 14th, so that's 1 week from today at 11 o'clock Central Time. And then we have Module 3, the community level. We have 3 webinars for that one. We have July 17th, the 21st, and the 25th. As you can see, they're scheduled in the different time zones, but you certainly can attend any webinar that suits your schedule, and you can register for them on our website as well. And I know you can on the partnership website. So if you go to the annual report tab, and all the webinars with the registration links are there. And so I need to take a look at some questions.
So 2 quick questions that we just received asking about the location of the annual report numbering on the website and this webinar. Kyle, if you can go back to the screenshot of our website, we can know where these are located. Thank you. All listed here. On the left-hand side of our homepage, you will see a tab that says CSBG. If you click on that tab, then you will find resources on the left side for the annual report, CSBG IS. All these are under the CSBG annual report tab on our website. If you have specific additional questions, please contact one of us and we can help you locate the resources that you're trying to find. Ones that we have received are specific to the demographics section of the annual report. As Jackie mentioned, we are working on a CSBG annual report instruction manual. We will include details in that manual on the demographics and all of the indicators as well. The two questions that came up today were what definition of a multi-generational household? And what we say now is that in general, it is more than 2 generations living in the same household. Another question that we were asked was about other permanent supportive housing, other permanent housing that's identified in demographics, the all characteristics report. And that could be any type of other permanent housing. Maybe it's a HUD or VA permanent supportive housing program. Maybe there's other types of situations out there where somebody has permanent housing, but they don't fit into the own or rent category. So we will provide additional information on those as well in the instruction manual. And Kyle has it up on the screen of where to find all of these resources by clicking the CSBG annual report button by the yellow arrow. I have no other questions at this time. So we thank you all for joining us today. We understand that you all are very busy, and we thank you for taking the time out of your day to learn more about this new annual report. As Jack mentioned, we have upcoming webinars. If you haven't registered for them, please do so. We're doing one more on Module 4 and then 3 on Module 3. So we hope that you join us again for more discussion on the new annual report. Thank you all and have a great day.